able to package over 1,000 kits. And this would not have been possible without the collaboration of our Kiwanis GTA community. We also made a donation of $8,000 to that, so that we actually paid for the kit contents as well, going to Syria and the refugees there. So that's one of our first in-person volunteering in 2 years. So that was amazing. Into everyone's surprise, it was a lot of fun. Oh no, wait, it's always fun to get together. Next, I'd like to welcome our guests who have joined us today, especially our guest speaker and Foundation Director, Leadership Coach, Alena Sviderskaia, who will be formally introduced later in the program. And we would also like to heartily welcome our visiting Kiwanis network. We salute our fellow Kiwanians, distinguished lieutenant governors, presidents, secretaries, treasurers, and members from across Canada, Toronto, Jamaica, the Bahamas, and the United States. Our service leadership program presidents and members, thank you for joining us. Thank you for dedicating yourself to the mission of serving the children of the world. Lives have been impacted and improved in every corner of the globe because of the amazing work that you do, especially on the 23rd of October. Time will not permit us to list everyone and recognize everyone. So I graciously ask that you place, and a lot of you have, your club name and delegation in the chat so that you can be acknowledged. Again, welcome everyone. As the holiday season approaches, we look forward to another opportunity for collaboration. And we will be partnering with our oldest legacy partner, the Boys and Girls Club Toronto, on their holiday hamper, as you know, as well as anything that holiday related with them. And there we are. So, Denise, could you please, President-elect Denise, immediate President-elect Denise Gasham, would you like to introduce our guest speaker today?
First, I would like to apologize that I'm having technical difficulties, so I don't have a camera, or I have a camera that I can't access. My apologies for that. But, and I also want to say that one day was incredible. I learned how to, what is that? Shrink wrap giant packages, giant boxes. And so, you know, all of these new skills you can learn when you get involved in Kiwanis. Not something I thought I would learn, but great to learn as well. I am very pleased to be introducing Alena. Alena has spoken for to our meetings before, and she's an incredible speaker and always gives us something that's a great takeaway. Alena is an experienced leadership coach and consultant and creator of the You've Rest program. As a passionate leadership coach and unwavering advocate of unlimited human potential, Alena is on a mission to help organizations become better places to work by turning managers into leaders and tapping into innate employee strengths to create a culture of passion and full engagement. During her corporate career, Alena was responsible for the launch of a key diversity and inclusion program with a focus on millennials, which is definitely a group that, as the Kiwanis Club Toronto, we have a focus on. We appreciate all demographics, but we are really focused on millennials right now, and that's amazing. But she also has an intergenerational approach, and I think that's important for many of us in Kiwanis as we think about how to engage members from different walks of life. In addition, she has the honor of being selected as a Finance Gives Ambassador, and she traveled to South Africa and Swaziland, where she used her finance acumen to provide on-the-fly support to several not-for-profit organizations. Thank you so much for being with us, Alena. Over to you.
Thank you so much. This was so amazing. So I will just start sharing my screen and hope the technology gods are on my side. So, okay, can you see my screen? We're good to go. Okay, Perfect. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about how to set ourselves up for success through the authentic personal brand. And when Carrie Ann asked me if I wanted to talk about how we can leverage our personal brand for more happiness and fulfillment, I was really, really excited, because if you think about it, personal brand is just a fancy expression for what other people think and feel when they hear our name. It's the strength, the skills, the values, and principles that we show to people around us through our choices, our behaviors, and our words. So even though, as you heard, my professional work focuses more on leadership development, my conversations with clients keep going back to the topic of personal brand and reinforcing the idea that much of the dissatisfaction that we face in life and in career as well often comes down to the same thing. It's the lack of clarity of who we are, where we are at the moment, and where we want to be. So, and the pandemic actually made it much worse, right? So there's no denying that the pandemic was not fun by any means, and the levels of life and work satisfaction dropped for many people. In some cases, pandemic truly became the direct source of stress and pain for people, like losing loved ones, lack of in-person contact, and for others, it's losing their jobs. Absolutely. But for many, many people, pandemic actually became a magnifying glass, exposing all the areas that we neglected for a long time, all the areas that we didn't pay attention to when we were running around on autopilot. It almost worked as an emergency brake that forced many people to face some things that we ignored. For some, it was health, for some relationships, for some unsatisfactory careers, for some, all of those areas. And that's why we now see a big surge in divorce rates and career changes and just questioning our lives. It's not surprising at all. And so this discussion today is an opportunity to reflect and get out of the passenger seat and get behind the wheel instead. So of course, we will not be able to go deep today. We only have 15 minutes, but I will give you a simple template that you can use to go deeper on your own if today's topic resonates with you. And I really hope that it will resonate with you. So why is personal brand so important? Well, authentic personal brand becomes a very powerful compass that helps you navigate your life when you're at crossroads. For example, when you're trying to choose the best job, the best relationships, how to spend your free time, having that compass makes it so much easier to make the best choices for you, because they may not be the same for everybody, but it's about you, right? And those choices will lead to life experiences that are energizing, rewarding, fulfilling. They will lead to personal growth and relationships that are deep and meaningful. And I think for many of Kiwanians, all of this is really important. That's why we're all here together. So this is not just for businesses. It's not just for consultants or professionals, marketers.
No.
This is for anyone who wants
So
to.
you operate in Massachusetts?
I think someone is not on mute. So unfortunately, very few people actually know who they are. In fact, we often greatly overestimate how well we know ourselves. And research shows that other people actually know us better than we know ourselves. And that is because we so rarely create time and space to look at who we are. What makes us come alive? What's important to us? And often we end up wasting energy and time chasing other people's dreams and goals and trying to become someone else. And I hear this all the time in my coaching sessions. And I coach a lot of managers, and I see the situation where introverted managers who, instead of leveraging their skills of listening and reflecting and deep thinking, are spending their time trying to become energetic, inspirational, outgoing extroverts who can make decisions on the fly. Not only does it become a colossal energy drain, but it often results in low self-esteem and loneliness, because to build strong, deep connections, we cannot do that without showing up as our true self. So authentic personal brand is when your day-to-day life is aligned with your values, when you get to use your strengths and talents, and when you get to do what you're passionate about. And to get to that circle, or the little piece in the middle, we need to understand what are values, what are our strengths and talents, and what makes us come alive, to create that opportunity to reflect on that, and then create opportunities to experience this as much as possible in our day-to-day life, in our life and personal life and careers as well. And this is a simple template you can use to put together your personal brand that covers all of the areas. Today, I will share with you some simple exercises that you can do to think about each one of these areas. And for all of these areas, you can, of course, go as shallow or as deep as you want to. You may just decide to, hey, I'm just going to write down things that come to my mind when I think about this. And don't worry, and I have the deck and the handout to be sent to you as well. So if you don't worry, you'll have this as well. And you can go deeper. And if you do decide to go deeper, as I mentioned, I will have a handout that you can then use to do the exercises on your own when we're done. So first up is our values. According to the dictionary, a value is a person's principle or standard of behavior, one's judgment of what's important in life. The values are the lens through which we see ourselves in the world around us. They hold the key to what it means to be the best version of ourselves. When we know what they are and we choose to live according to them, our lives gain meaning and purpose. So research backs that up. And I love research. So people with strong sense of their values report higher level of self-confidence, of satisfaction with their career, and overall happiness. And that's what we're after. So it's no wonder that when we don't know what our values are, or we choose to ignore them, our lives lack meaning and fulfillment. Values, of course, are not fixed. They can change over our lifetime, and some values as we grow older may lose some importance, and others may become more important. Our first and most dominant values come from our families. We're soaking them up at early age by watching our parents and hearing the stories around the dinner table. And as we grow, the life around us becomes to affect that. We adopt values from our teachers, our friends, personal experiences. Some of these values fit perfectly with others that we already have, but some may actually contradict them. Like, for example, think about being bold and being modest, or justice and compassion. So these values, we may hold both of them, but they may contradict each other. As an adult, we must consciously decide which values are right for us. Some values were collected over time may still be relevant, and some we may need to let go. So for example, if all your life you have been taught the importance of being modest as you were growing up, I certainly have. As we're trying to find our own voice and make bold decisions, create brands, and really show up, this value of modesty may no longer serve us and even get in the way. So if you have experienced internal resistance and self-sabotage, there may be something there. So sorting through the values, of course, and intentionally choosing them will take some time, but it's super important because they are the foundation of your personal brand. So there are a few things that you can do to discover your values. The simplest one is for anyone who just wants to, the quick exercise is to write down anything that comes to your mind as being important to you. Just writing things down. And these may be things like honesty, personal growth, learning, sense of belonging, ambition, achievement, whatever it is. So this is the simplest way. If, of course, you want to go deeper, there's another way. And this is my favorite ways to go through this is to look at the list of values, and I will send them to you in the handout. So if you go through the list of values, feel which one's resonating with you and circling them. Once you are done with the list, you can go back and select the 5 or 7 maximum that really resonate with you. So this is something that will allow you to go beyond what immediately comes to your mind. You will feel when your body responds to them. And in the handout, you will have an exercise called the Tree of Values that will guide you through the process and will even help you understand where your values are coming from, like from your families or you accumulated them throughout the life. Now it's time to move on to the second circle, skills and talents. So what are you actually good at? There are a few ways to go about this. And the more of these you use, the more accurate the picture is going to be, because remember, we're not the best judge when it comes to ourselves. Simple and fun shortcut to start this process is online tests. I love online tests, and some of them are free, some of them are paid. One of my favorite ones is called 16 Personalities. So if you want to explore it, it's free, it's fun, and it will tell you some of the basics about your personality and your strengths probably. Again, probably some of you heard about the Strength Finder, the test that you can do when you pay for it, also equally valuable. The second way is to go through your personal and professional history and list as many things as possible. Don't limit yourself here. With values, we want to limit to the 5-7. Here, don't limit yourself. Go nuts. List as many things as possible as you're good at. So think about what people are complimenting you on, what people see you as an expert at, or come to you for help. Again, personal and professional, because all of this is very related. So it can be a natural talent, like being a good storyteller, or having a great sense of humor, or fashion, like Carrie Ann at our Kiwanis one day, or something you've mastered over the years, like being maybe a technology guru or attentive listener. So the third option, again, that's my favorite. I'm biased. And in fact, I had many of my clients use it and find it insightful. It's called asking a friend. Like I said earlier, we're not as self-aware as we think we are. And that's where others can really help us fill the gaps. So to do this exercise is very simple. Just making a list of people you know well and whose opinion matters to you. Make sure that this is actually people whose opinion matters to you. Preferably people you feel like yourself around, and send them a quick message asking them what they think your strengths are. And I typically like to ask 3 questions that cover all the bases, and the answers to this are really fun to read. So one of the questions I ask is, what do you think are my greatest strengths and quirks? I want to understand what makes me unique. Another question is, when have you seen me shine? That actually, sometimes we're not even aware of the energy we have, and people are more aware of that, so they can provide that insight. And finally, can you think of a fun or unique experience you shared with me? So that's another thing that can be really helpful. So asking someone about how they see us can feel uncomfortable because it takes courage, but being vulnerable often leads to deep conversations and create quantum leaps in our development and the quality of our relationships. Because I recognize it can be challenging to start, in the handout, I included a templated message you can send out. But of course, you can make up your own as well. And I use this exercise many times myself, and also many of my clients use this as well. And they all report having fantastic experience. And one thing that everybody's surprised is by how consistent the responses are. And the point of this exercise is to see yourself through other people's eyes, because we often become our own worst critics. And sometimes we stay blind to our strengths because we assume that if we are good at something and something comes easy to us, everybody must be good at this, which is not the case at all. And of course, it just feels great to hear about how amazing we are, right? So once you go through these exercises and self-reflection, add as many of your strengths, skills, and talents to the template. Finally, we move on to the third circle. What makes you come alive and show up as the best version of yourself? Again, there are a few ways to go about this. A simple way to start is by looking at the list of strengths and talents that you put together before, you're going to put together as a list, and highlight the ones that you enjoy using. Because just because you're good at something doesn't mean you love doing it. I personally spent over 10 years in finance and accounting, and even though I was really good at it, I couldn't wait to move on to not doing it. Just saying. So another way to do it is to reflect on special moments in your life, things that are memorable for you. And I have added this exercise to your handout. It asks you to think about at least 5 moments that made you feel fantastic, things that pop in your mind, and things that are memorable to you. It can be anything. It can be feeling of pride about something, memories you share with someone, can be achievements, decisions you're proud that you made in your life, or even meeting and interacting with somebody who had positive impact. So for example, when I was doing all the exercises when I was preparing for this presentation, and one of the memorable moments I had was a trip to New York 2 years ago with a friend of mine to celebrate her big birthday. And when I reflected on what made it so special, I realized it's because we together created many unique experiences during that trip, and we shared them. So it allowed us to really connect on a much deeper level. So that gave me an insight into what are some of the things that are important to me. Right? So these moments are powerful insights into who you are and what makes you come alive. And once you go through this, again, it's time to add this to the template. So when I'll give you an example. So as I was doing this exercise, as I was preparing for this presentation, this is the template that I filled out based on all of this. And I decided to add the fourth thing is words I live by, because the quotes, the mantras, the words of wisdom that speak to you also provide a very powerful insight into who you are. So as I was going through this, I realized that the quote that comes back to me often is, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. And I live by this, or working smarter and not harder. So as you feel this out, then you can put together your personal brand. And there's no wrong or right way to do this, to put it together, as long as it resonates with you. It can be a simple statement or a detailed manifesto or poem. It doesn't really matter. But the most important thing is that the most aligned and most authentic brands would consist of words that align with all of these areas as much as possible. So your values, your strengths, and your passion. So I'll give you an example, again, based on my personal exercises that I did for that. Just an example, and I highlighted in red, I highlighted all the words that came from those 4 different areas, right? So for me, based on the conversations I had and the skills and strengths and what makes me come alive, I said, okay, I see greatness in people before they see themselves. This is my biggest strength. And I help them reach their full potential, because this is something, it's one of my values. And I do it through my easy to digest, actionable content. And this is because I like easiness. That's one of my values. It's easy flow. I live for the opportunities to grow, to learn new things, and connect and share experiences with like-minded, passionate people. And that's why I see, and being part of Kiwanis is actually, I'm living this value by being part of this amazing group. And finally, is I consciously and consistently create space in my life for exploring new ideas, new places and experiences, because that's what's important to me. And I share it with people I love, and I do it by working smarter, not harder. So just looking at all of this helped me come up with that personal brand and think about how I can live even more of this. And the more you can show up as your personal avatar, or this live your personal brand in your day-to-day life, in your personal life, and in your career, the more energized and fulfilled you will feel. So I really hope this was valuable. I tried to do it within the 15 minutes. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them now. Or if you decide to do it later on your own and you have questions about some of it, please feel free to reach out to me. I would be more than happy to help you with this. So thank you so much. So if there's anyone that has questions about this, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alena. So Denise is normally, I know she's having technical difficulties, but normally there's Q&A. And so I'll start it off. I have a first question. I put it in the chat. But what my question was you mentioned introverts and how they're very rarely celebrated in corporate society or in society in general, especially if they're leading from the quietness within them. And that's not to say that they're bad, but perception in many cases is reality in everyone's mind. Mm-hmm. So I work with a number of introverts, and they are leaders in their own way. And my question to you is, how do they like to receive recognition, and how me being a little bit of an introvert, as Andrea would attest to, what do you think is the best way to recognize an introverted person?
So first of all, I thank you for bringing this up, because in all honesty, if I reflect on the coaching sessions that I have with leaders, I think this comes up, 80% of the time. And that's the internal struggle of trying to be an extrovert. Really is something that comes up a lot. And like you said, it's perception is the reality, unfortunately. So there's a lot of internal and external barriers to overcome here. In terms of recognition, it really depends. It really depends because there's different ways to do it. And I always recommend to have conversations with people. So for example, if you're working with introverted leaders, it doesn't mean that they will all would like to be recognized in the same way. And it will be tied back to their values, right? So it's because for some, it's learning and growing. So for somebody, even recognition can be tied to giving them opportunities to do more. So for somebody, if this is something that's important to them, it's not necessarily you want someone to stand up in front of the room and acknowledge them. For some, that will be really important to have that public acknowledgement. For some, it's through actions like giving them more opportunities or allowing them to mentor others or saying that face to face. Whenever I work with leaders, I always recommend prioritizing having the one-on-one conversations with your direct reports and exploring that. And actually, sometimes it's even asking this question directly. You've been doing such an amazing job, and I would love to recognize you. Tell me, how would you like to be recognized? So it's actually having that conversation, and having conversations like this takes relationships deeper. I'm a big fan and proponent of coaching in the workplace and having those regular, consistent, recurring one-on-one conversations, because that's where you build trust. You learn the specific, unique strengths and talents and values of people around you, so you can motivate them the way they need to be motivated. Mm-hmm. Or you rather than not motivate them directly, but create an environment in which they feel motivated. I hope that answers the question.
That answers my question. Yes, for sure.
I was gonna take over for Denise because she just made me know that her technical difficulties are posing a bit of a challenge for her usual Q&A. There is a question in the chat that says, how much time should you dedicate to working on your brand? Is there a particular time of day, month, or year that you recommend, or alignment with overall planning?
Well, it's actually there is not one specific answer. It also depends on where you are in the process. If you're tweaking it, of course, it's going to take, for me, when I was doing all the exercises, it took me an hour just to put everything together because I already have done a lot of them. Sometimes it will take even a part about values. If you haven't really thought about this ever, that may be worthwhile to dig a little bit deeper, especially because some of the values contradict each other. And this personal brand is an ever-evolving process. So today it's going to be this, and it can be a shorter statement that resonates with you. 6 months from now, it may be something else. So it evolves as you evolve, as you take on your new roles, new experiences. But I would highly recommend at least looking at it maybe every 6 months. And as you are making some decisions for your life, like when you're at crossroads or you have new careers, making decisions, it's worthwhile to spend more time on that. Does that make sense? Excellent. Thank you.
I have one question of my own in relation to for leaders or coaches who manage and lead a diverse group. There are a melting pot of personalities within that group, and your personality or your leadership style may be one way. How do you stay authentic to who you are, whether you are an introvert, an extrovert, a situational leader, whatever type of leadership style that you have? How do you stay authentic to who you are while still providing the leadership support that your team needs so that they can feel comfortable in the space and be their best selves, and you still remain authentic to who you are?
Mm-hmm. It's a really, really good question. I really appreciate you asking it, because this is something that I often face people struggle with, because there is a perception of what your typical leader looks like and behaves like, and what's the effective. So it's the associations we have. Leadership, if you think about, so leaders, the role of a leader is get results through other people. That's your basic role of a leader. to put it in big picture. There are so many different ways to get there. It's not about how you get it. It's doing that. It's how do you support and encourage people to do the work, and that there's so many different ways where you can arrive, and using your unique strengths and first of all, it starts with understanding, will allow you to create the shortcut for that. So you're not trying to be somebody else. And it all goes back to having that trusting relationship with your direct reports, where they understand who you are, where you understand who they are. Because when you are, so to create a motivational environment for people, there are 5 basic needs that everybody has. They need to know who they report to. They need to understand what their role are, what their role is. They need to understand what the performance expectations are. They need to have ongoing supporting relationship. So the one-on-ones is where you understand what their needs are. And as a leader, you become, I always think of leaders as when you transition from independent contributor to a leader, it's like you become this person in curling where you sweep. You no longer do the thing, you're supporting. And that's where you support, when you understand what your team needs, that's the best way to support it. It's not about who you are as personality, but it's really getting to know your people and what they need. It's not about you anymore. Does it make sense? So there's very, very different ways to do that. Once you have the trust, you can support them regardless of the personality and the style you are.
Thank you very much, Alena. Are there any more questions in relation to personal branding, or in terms of growing your own personal brand, or the steps that you need to take? I'm not. Oh, yes, I have a question. Yay.
Yes, I do. I just want to ask, Alena, would you consider the method of the DISC assessment as an aid to be better able to identify others, like their personality? How do you approach connecting with an individual as opposed to maybe not having an understanding of what makes the person want to cooperate with you? I am familiar with the DISC assessment, but I would like to know your take on it. Can you tell me?
Mm-hmm. The relationship with all the tests and assessments is very tricky, right? Because it depends on the person when they take it. Are they trying to make themselves look a certain way? Are they being truthful? Because sometimes we do feel the pressure of, oh my God, there's a question and it's probably measuring whether I'm an introvert or an extrovert. What's the best way for me to answer? So sometimes it's also the quality of the input affects the results of the output, but it's also an interpretation of when we, as people on the receiving end, when we're reading someone's report, we're also bringing our assumptions and into the results and how we interpret them. So we need to be careful about this. I treat assessments of any sort as an aid, as a supplement, not the main point, but it's almost a point of discussion. It's kind of, for my coaching sessions, I often use different assessments. And then when I have the assessment in front of us, we go over this together, because it's more of what the person thinks and as they read their own assessment, how they react to it. It's more of a conversation starter rather than, the conclusion, right? So it's the same thing when I mentioned 16 personalities. It's great to start it and have fun with it. Don't take it too personally, because it can, or too seriously, it may change, but it's a great starting point of thinking. But nothing will ever replace those one-on-one conversations where you try to really understand who is the person in front of you, what matters to them, what are their strengths, and do they even recognize their own strengths? And that when anyone in the organization sees and feels this genuine interest, like my manager spends an hour every 2 weeks, or he takes or she takes this time out of their busy schedule and they focus on me. They focus on, what do I want? What are my challenges? How can they support me? This is the most powerful leadership tool anyone can have. Extroverts, introverts, doesn't really matter. Assessments, all of this comes secondary, but it's the conversations. That's where you discover the real stuff.
Thank you so much. So you hit the nail on the head in that last statement. Self-discovery is the way to go. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Thank you very, very much. This part Denise also does much better than I do, but Alena, we want to say a huge thank you for sharing with our team. And we know you give so much already to the foundation, but as our guest speaker, we want to ensure that a donation is made in your name to the oldest legacy partner, the BGC, Toronto Kiwanis, to provide 40 weeks of transformative after-school literacy programming. So thank you very, very much. So over to you, Tim. And again, thank you very much, Alena.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Alena, thank you so much. I do make a lot of effort on our branding, both personally and in business, and I really enjoy listening to these things because it reiterates and reinforces things that we may have forgotten. I'm always very fond of saying, no matter what you do, that's your brand. So when you're taking, and it's a big topic these days, how do people see you and what perception is? And so thank you so much for coming. And we look forward to event number 2 in this series on personal branding, which is coming up on November 24th with, Gil Cohen is coming to speak. And I believe, Alena, you know him very well.
Yes, he is a fantastic expert on employee experience, and he's looking at it through a lens of employees. So it's how, in our careers, how do we create that experience that's beneficial for us and rewarding for us? What are some of the things to look for? He's fantastic.
Okay. So just some upcoming events. Thank you so much again. November 10th is our Remembrance Day luncheon. Typically, it is the day before Remembrance Day. And so what we're going to encourage you all to do is fully engage in Remembrance Day the next day. And we will go dark on November 10th so that we can respect those that have fallen and those that have served us here in Canada and abroad. So again, no luncheon event on November 10th, and we will resume our programming on November 24th. We also have December 8th coming up, the Kiwanis Club of Toronto lunch event, holiday hamper celebration with the Boys and Girls Club Toronto Kiwanis. And we're going to have some interesting factoids and development from the Boys and Girls Club of what's happening on this past year, and what's going on at the club for the holidays. And with that, if there's nothing for the good of Kiwanis, I would like to adjourn the meeting. We're actually ahead of time, Alena, so that's going to be our brand from now on, is we're going to be the club that ends ahead of time. No? All
right. Just to quickly jump in, Tim, here. 2 clubs shared with us some quick updates. It's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So the Kiwanis Club of Cyber Connect Jamaica has their Breast Cancer Awareness Month speaker this afternoon by Zoom at 7. And tomorrow, the Kiwanis Club of 23 East, their online installation ceremony via Zoom as well. Please lend your support to these leaders as they take up the challenge of leadership into the next Kiwanis year. That's it for the good of Kiwanis from my end.
All right. Well, thank you very much for all attending, Thank you to all of you for attending today. Have a lovely day. It's bright and sunny in Toronto, and hopefully the same down in the Caribbean and in Florida and everywhere else that you guys have dialed in. And again, we're so very humbled that you chose us to join today. Have a great afternoon. We'll talk soon.
Okay. And quick.
Lovely meeting. Bye, Carrie. Bye, President Tim.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.